Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 21 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien, that's me, and our special guest for today, Sean Fagan, who's going to be answering our questions today. Sean, please say hi, introduce yourself, and give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do before I shoot some questions.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Sean Fagan. A lot of people know me as the Muay Thai guy. I'm a recently retired professional fighter who is also an entrepreneur. I run an online business revolving around teaching people Muay Thai and getting in shape while doing it, while actually learning how to fight. We also host retreats around the world. Currently, I've been doing a lot of private lessons at my home in New York after living in Thailand for 3 years and fighting out there. COVID really changed the direction of a lot of people's lives, and we're happily back here in the U.S. And yeah, just excited about the next step in my career. But generally speaking, most people know me as the Muay Thai guy, the Muay Thai fighter, and yeah, very much enjoy my work.
Brilliant, I can tell, and yeah, that's really interesting. I tell you what, it's funny to see someone who's so good at fighting and so good at this kind of stuff, also succeeding in the business side of things and social media. So I tell you what, I really can't wait to ask these four questions. If you're ready, let's crack on with question number one.
Born ready, man. Let's go.
Love to hear it. So for question one, tell me about your history. How did you originally get into the martial arts and Muay Thai, and how did it go from there to where you are today?
So bringing it like all the way back is when I was a kid, I played a lot of team sports, baseball, hockey, and no matter how well I did, even though I wasn't like in a superstar athlete or anything, I was very average. I didn't even play most of the time, but when I did, I made sure to get quality reps in, right?
Mm.
And no matter how well I would do in a game, say I scored 3 or 4 goals in a hockey game, my team would always I ended up playing on a team that just wouldn't win, right? And so hockey, being naturally competitive in that space, I kept finding myself in scuffles, I kept finding myself in fights. And after one game, my mom just kind of asked me like, why do you even play hockey when you're spending half the game in the penalty box, right?
That's a
You should just
great
join you should
question.
just join a boxing gym. She said this like jokingly, right? Because my mom regrets ever telling me this, but it planted the seed in my mind. I'm like, oh, that would be interesting to do. So I tried boxing probably when I was like 16 or 17 years old. I was a very skinny kid, right? I was not a confident kid. I was afraid of confrontation. I was always worried about just someone stepping up to me, right? And like,
Mm.
what would I do? How would I handle myself? And so I went into boxing. That gradually led to Muay Thai and MMA and wanting to kind of be a UFC fighter, right? You see all that stuff on TV and MMA, and it's like cool and badass, and you want to like prove something. And back then, I realized because I didn't play so much in team sports that I had a little bit of an insecurity in me where I felt like I needed to prove something. I'm also a middle child, and that probably has something to do with it as well.
Sure.
But I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder, like I had something to prove. And so, kind of facing my fears of fighting and wanting to kind of confront myself and prove to other people around me who kind of doubted me as I was growing up that I could do whatever I set my mind to. I could be a badass fighter, right? And so during that time period, a lot was going on in my life. I just broke up with my girlfriend. My lease ended. I got fired from my job. Just like a compilation of things that just like weren't going right. But at that time, I also kind of picked up reading. This was after college, which I failed out of, by the way, because I just couldn't sit in a classroom, listen to stuff that I wasn't even really interested in, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I once I started reading books that I actually wanted to read, it really just changed my life. And so I read The Fighter's Heart by Sam Sheridan, which is about his journey to Thailand to fight Muay Thai, Brazil to do jiu-jitsu, the US to do wrestling, and so on and so forth. And that really just was such a romanticized version of that would be so cool to travel the world and like train all these different martial arts, right?
Yeah.
And that at the same time, I read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. This was about like 12, 13, even longer. Shit, it's been a long time, man. But I read that a long time ago, and that planted the idea in my head like, oh, I could live my life differently. I can not have to just work a 9 to 5 if I didn't want to. And I had a lot of great jobs growing up. I was an ice skating instructor, I was a baseball instructor, I was a lifeguard, like I was a kids martial arts instructor, but I never liked having a boss. And so the idea of traveling the world, competing in, I didn't know at the time Muay Thai was going to be my thing, but once I flew to Thailand, after, oh, one thing I totally forgot to mention is, so my girlfriend broke up with me. My lease ended. I got fired from my job. I was a personal trainer, right? And but I play online poker, and it kind of was a very serendipitous, just events all happening at once. I won a poker tournament. I played poker online. I won a poker tournament for about $15,000. I finished reading The Fighter's Heart. I finished reading The 4 Hour Work Week, and I was I had like nothing to do, right? And I just won. I just got this money, fortunately. And so I was like, you know what, fuck, I'm just gonna go to Thailand and fight and see where that takes me. So I bought a plane ticket to Thailand, went there for 3 months, had my first 3 fights. And it was after the third fight where I really made the decision that this was going to be my life, because the first 2 fights were kind of mismatches. I won. They helped me get my confidence up and everything, right? But they weren't good matchups, because that happens very often in Thailand when foreigners go there to compete for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So in the third matchup, they actually matched me up with like a legit fighter, and that went all 5 rounds, and I learned so much about myself in that fight. And I ended up losing, but the fact that I was able to push myself past this comfort zone, I was actually able to like confront myself and get up from the stool, even though I've never been as tired in my entire life, really showed me how much growth can come from confronting your fears and kind of taking risks like that. And so I remember going back to my bungalow in Thailand and looking in the mirror and just deciding like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure this out. I know Muay Thai fighters don't make a lot of money. Uh, Jiu-jitsu I trained for about 2 years, but I just didn't take to it. Just the grappling arts just didn't take. I was always like boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do Muay Thai. And then that's when I started blogging about Muay Thai and my training journey and my journey to becoming a fighter. And then I just kind of documented that, and it gradually turned into like a YouTube channel, a podcast, a website. And now it's this like crazy business that I'm so grateful for, because I'm able to help change people's lives through the power of Muay Thai, with these retreats, with my training programs, with my free content on YouTube. So I felt like a lot of this kind of came full circle. And now, after competing and fighting in Thailand the past, well, I've been competing for a little over 10 years. I've had 35 fights. And then my last fight was in 2019. I thought I was going to continue fighting, right? But then the pandemic happened, everything shut down. And we were just in Thailand during the pandemic, which was one of the better places to be, honestly. We had a beautiful house on the beach because it's so cheap out there, right? And so we were able to just make the most of it, even though it was kind of isolated because we were on an island. And yeah, then we ended up having our first son, Theo, who was born about 2 months ago.
Wow,
And we
congratulations. Yeah.
thank you so much. And then like coming back to the States after 3 years in Thailand, we realized how important it was to be around family. And so now we've kind of rooted down here. I decided to stop fighting because it stresses me out. And I'm getting old. And so there's a lot more money to be made and a lot more change to be made through doing other things that I'm skilled in and passionate about. So that's my long-winded answer right there.
I love that. That's such an interesting story, and I love how it comes from such, humble beginnings and everything. And I think one of the things I've noticed straight away about you and your mindset is that you're not done, are you? This is like, just because you've retired from it now, it doesn't mean you're over at all, does it? You're going to go at something completely different. You're going to keep pushing all the other stuff that you're doing, and that's really something interesting. For question number two, I did want to ask something more specifically about Muay Thai. I feel like this really ties in well with the first answer you gave me. So, why should you start Muay Thai? As someone who's been doing this for years, explain to us how it has affected your life and what the biggest benefits are for someone who is undecided and about to go for their first session.
Well, with Muay Thai, it is just such an insightful experience. You learn so much about yourself. And it's just one of the many martial arts that allow you to kind of meet yourself, because you can't lie about how good of a fighter you are, right? You can't kind of pretend you're a good fighter, because once you spar, once you actually fight, the truth comes out. And
Mm,
so you're forced to learn how to be disciplined. You're forced to learn how to work hard. And it kind of teaches these tools that you're able to develop as a person and then ideally implement them into your own life. And that's going to give you more confidence. That's going to give you more accountability. It's going to give you more motivation to stay healthy, to stay active, to stay mentally sharp too. Because with fighting, it's not just a physical game. A lot of it is very mental, being able to challenge yourself day in and day out, right? Because when you're, whether you're actually competing to fight one day or not, just training consistently 4 or 5 times a week, that is going to push you to a certain limit that most people aren't used to going to. And so you start to get used to the discomfort, and in that discomfort comes growth. And so it's essentially a tool to just kind of better yourself. And if you're able to utilize that and kind of face your fears about getting punched in the face or stepping into a Muay Thai gym or whatever it may be, it can really just be that next level of growth personally for you. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because without Muay Thai, I feel like I wouldn't really know who I am. And I'm much more confident in who I am. I'm much more certain of like who I am as a person, what my values are and everything.
mm.
And I think a lot of that to Muay Thai.
Just out of interest as well, just going off what you just answered there as well. I just want to ask if you're someone who was kind of like you at the beginning, maybe a bit skinny, a bit self-conscious and stuff, couldn't imagine themselves in a fight, and you're looking to get into martial arts, would you say that Muay Thai would be the best place to start with martial arts, or would you do sort of what you did, maybe start with something a bit, safer, maybe potentially like jiu-jitsu, or do you think Muay Thai is just something you should just go straight into and just crack on with?
Well, it's so dependent, right? But any martial art, any discipline is going to benefit you in one form or another. I personally love Muay Thai because of the culture and the tradition behind it, and also how simple it is in the sense of like the techniques are simple. It's just like a roundhouse kick or a punch or a knee, right? But the way you're able to turn that into like a deadly weapon, right, and use it to defend yourself, and also while like developing a rock hard body and rock hard mind by kind of challenging yourself against another human being. So it can be very intimidating. It is very intimidating, right? But generally speaking, the Muay Thai community is so supportive and amazing, and the people in it are really there to help you grow and help you become a better person. And it's just a really nice community to be a part of, and it's a smaller one, right? And the jiu-jitsu has its own community, karate has its own taekwondo, right? But the Muay Thai community just spoke to me, and whatever kind of speaks to you as a person, whether it's uh, like taekwondo, right, and being in South Korea and traveling there, or if it is jiu-jitsu and wanting to experience the Brazilian culture down there and how Brazil grew up, right? I really just have enjoyed the whole process of immersion, learning the Thai language, learning about the Thai people and why and how Muay Thai kind of originated and why it's such an enrooted part of the culture. And so that just intrigued me. And probably because it was, I don't know, it's a combination of things. It was the fighter's heart, but he also traveled to Brazil and did jiu-jitsu. So I think whatever just kind of piques your curiosity, whether it's either even MMA in the US, right? There's so many great MMA gyms around here as well. And there seems to be more and more popping up. That being said, there are some, as they say, McDojos where they're not really qualified to be teaching the art, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I think it's just kind of pick your favorite ice cream color or flavor,
Mm.
rather, in the sense with like pick your favorite martial art. And Muay Thai, I'm obviously super biased, but is my favorite for sure.
Nice one. Brilliant. So, for my third question, I would really like to tap into a little bit more about your kind of entrepreneurial side and stuff. So, you've done something very special with your following a bit, and by picking up the numbers you have on social media. So my question is, for other guys who also might want to start documenting their martial arts journey, do you have any good tips for growing a great following on social media like yours and engaging your fans?
Yeah, so that's such a multi-leveled question, right? Because
Sure.
when I first started, it was totally different because there's honestly like a pre-COVID and post-COVID with like social media and how people are utilizing it to ideally make a living, right? Because like, are you asking how do I like build my personal brand to make a living off of it, or how am I able to just build a following, right? Because there's so many people who have a big following, but what are you doing with it, right? Are you just building a following for the sake of building a following and having the vanity metrics of feeling like an important person, or are you actually utilizing that to create a business out of it, or change people's lives through it, or actually do some type of impact, right? So in that regard, I think the most important thing to do is first find out who you are. That's like the most important thing, right? And be able to communicate that through social media and try to be authentic, and don't like focus on all these like tactics and strategies, but just show up and be consistent. If there's one thing that is rooted in every aspect of life, is like if you're just consistent with it, you'll eventually get good at it, right? And so just constantly showing up. Before, like, I think I've made a Facebook post on my Muay Thai guy Facebook page every single day for the past 10 years. And I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. It's probably twice a day in the past 10 years. I've emailed my fans at least once a week for the past X amount of years. I've been consistently showing up. This is a part of my life. And so if you want to actually make this like sustainable, right, you kind of have to let it take over your life in a way. It sounds kind of crazy when I'm saying it like that and when I'm actually vocalizing it, but you have to really immerse yourself in this shit. And you also have to learn how to actually leverage your social media following, your fan base to make a living off of it. Because I see so many fighters, it's sad because they have so many followers and stuff, but I know Muay Thai, you don't make money, man. You just don't make money in Muay Thai. It's not a lucrative sport. You don't get into it to make money. So you have to either be top level, like 1%, like in MMA standards, like a Conor McGregor or a Floyd Mayweather, to make like that kind of money. But everyone thinks you're like making money as a fighter, but it's really hard to make a living. And so if you want to like take the martial arts route and become a fighter, or become someone who is able to make a living based off whatever they want, then you really just have to be consistent, show up for yourself, show up for the people who are supporting you, give back to the people who are supporting you, and try to drown out the noise of everyone telling you how to show up on social media, how to do certain things, and just be you and be consistent.
So much of that noise isn't there out there at the moment. And yeah, I just want to prove a point as well to a few people here too, from what you just said. So many people think that just because they've outputted, daily content for a couple of months and they're not really seeing the results and stuff, or even, a year or something like this, and they're not seeing the correct numbers. I just want to prove the point. So, Sean, how long do you think you've been outputting this content on Instagram, YouTube? How long do you think that's been going on for, and how have you managed to stay so consistent with it for that long?
Uh, Years for sure. For Facebook, I think I started 12 years ago.
There
So,
you
and
go.
that's been consistently every day. Instagram was a little bit later in the game. YouTube, I haven't been as consistent, but it's been like my blog posts, everything I've done has been 10 plus years in the making, including the fight portion of my career, because you have to also separate those two, right? Because
Hmm.
fighting is not really a game, right? I actually just read about a death of a fighter in Thailand from a brain injury, right? And so you can't like take it lightly either. And so it really just is evolved about like going all in, and feeling it is also important to feel like you have some type of support system around you, people around you who kind of at least believe in you. Because when I first started, man, and probably when a lot of people first start, I'm sure the same goes with you. Oh, you're starting a podcast. That's like cute, right? Like good luck, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's doing it now or whatever it is. Like you need people who are actually believing in you. And so I was very fortunate to have my wife throughout pretty much this entire journey, and my family. And so I don't know where I'm going with this exactly, but essentially, I've been at it for years. And if you want to really make something of this, you just got to commit. Like I was saying when I had my third fight, I remember the moment I decided like this was what I'm gonna do. Was it easy? No, hell fucking no. I lost fights. I broke my arm. I've been knocked out. I've had plenty of business failures as well, losing tens of thousands of dollars, having retreats go wrong, having all these things go wrong that make me really question, is this the right way? But I always rooted back into why I was doing it. And the why was so much greater than the pain or the quote unquote failures that I kept facing. And so I guess now speaking a little bit more about your question, I think it really just comes down to like figuring out why are you even doing this and why do you want to be doing this. A lot of people skip out on like the vision work and trying to figure out the direction of your life. And people, especially nowadays, want the quick fix, the quick dopamine hits, the likes, the all that shit, right? But it's the long-term investment, the long-term commitment to yourself and your vision, which is really going to like make the biggest difference, in my opinion.
Love that. Wow, what a deep answer. And just one more thing on that, on this topic as well, on that question. Would you say there was a certain point where everything just kind of clicked, in that 12 years or so, where everything just started to go kind of viral and start to shoot up, or was it something that was more of a gradual increase over time?
It was gradual. It was definitely gradual. And like I said, consistent. There was no viral video. There was no one thing that did it. It was just a compilation of putting one brick down at a time until I had a gigantic wall, just
Yeah,
like building the foundation and then just gradually adding to it. And yeah, just consistency, man. That's the key, at least from what
awesome.
I found.
Sure. Right. Well, so for our fourth and final question then, what are some of the things outside of the mats and the ring in your lifestyle that you have felt have the biggest impact on your performance with Muay Thai, either negatively or positively? So that could be something like sleep, diet, routines, anything.
That's a good question. I think nature and travel has really been key to give me different perspective on things, right? Because when you see the way people live in different parts of the world than where you're used to, it
Mm,
just changes the way you look at things, and it also just gives you a little bit more, I don't know, appreciation for life and feelings of gratitude. And always rooting down in gratitude has been important for me to get through tough times where I was broke or late on rent or lost a fight and couldn't move for a while, like whatever it was. I always just would root down to like, I'm so lucky to be able to pursue this, to have the body to be able to try to fight, right? A capable body, and also the ability to be living in a relatively comfortable. I have shelter, I have food, you know what I mean? And so every time I'm able to kind of root back down to that, that has been key. And in order to do that, changing my environment with travel and making sure I'm meeting different people, going to different places and seeing different ways of living, I find that was really life changing in many ways.
brilliant. And just for the flip side of that as well, just quickly, in other Muay Thai fighters and people you train with or spar with, you've seen coming in, in and out of the gyms and stuff, has there anything that you've noticed in their lives that they've done that's bad, that's had a really, really profound effect on their performance and, on their lifestyle in terms of the Muay Thai stuff?
Hmm. I think just getting wrapped up with like either the wrong people or the wrong ideas, because a lot of people get into the sport thinking it's one thing, and then you realize after doing it for long enough that it's something completely different. But you're not, like, your ego's too big to want to get out of it or or figure it out, and so you're this kind of stalemate with yourself, right? I
Mm,
also find people don't. Well, I guess like if you're talking about fighters, they don't have contingency plans, right? Like they all, it's just about fighting. It's not about like how are you going to sustain this for after you're done fighting. And that's one thing that's really sad when you see boxers or MMA fighters that are long retired, but they're broke, they're depressed because they've been punched in the head so many times, so they have CTE and whatnot. Like you got to figure out your future as well and like where that wants to be going, and that comes with just like I was always talking about, just being consistent with yourself and also having the vision of like, all right, how am I actually gonna logistically make this happen? Right. It's a good romanticized idea to be like, all right, I'm gonna become a professional fighter and make a living for the rest of my life off of this. Right. And even just saying that right now, it wasn't even about that. It's about like freedom, right? Freedom of expression of yourself and being able to fight for a living, right? To do something you really enjoy for a living, if it is something that you enjoy, right? And so I find a lot of people just end up just doing it because they think they should be doing it without real any intention behind it, but that's just like what they do now.
mm.
And they lose sight of why they're doing it. And so I guess to answer your question, it's just a lot of fighters just lose sight of like why they're doing it and like why it's important to them. And I think a lot of people neglect to do that kind of reflection. And going back to your last question, making sure you travel and meet new people and get different opinions and thoughts on things. That's why it's important.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, that is our four questions done for today. And before we wrap it up, it is time for what I like to call the shameless plug. Sean, feel free to take a minute and promote anything that you're working on, want people to take a look at, or just something that you believe in.
My main project is my Fighters Body Membership Academy. It is a 2-year program that I started before COVID, like January 2020. And it's an at-home Muay Thai workout program because I saw so many bad cardio kickboxing workouts where people are learning this false sense of confidence in their techniques. And I wanted to teach like the real thing. So I created a program that is an at-home program that you're learning Muay Thai, learning the techniques and the combos and the maneuvers that I actually implemented in fights and the drills and everything that have helped me get to the level that I'm at. And a lot of my career, I've always had support. I've always had trainers and stuff, but there were times like 80% of the time you're training, it's by yourself, right? And this was the kind of stuff I would do by myself. And so I want to kind of share that with people. And also the retreats that we do all around the world. Currently, we're doing some in Costa Rica. There's actually one happening in August, our first female only one. But I'll be hosting some in January and February in Costa Rica. We hope to be in Greece in June 2023. And yeah, and from there, you just connect with me on muaythaiguy.com or check out thefightersbody.com.
Brilliant. Sean, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening. This has been episode 21. And if you'd like to listen to our past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen for our future ones, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and comment. Signing off for now.